Welcome to Dynamics Compass, where we interview the experts so you don't have to figure it out the hard way. Today we've got Casey Thompson, the co-founder and EVP of consulting at Newark Solutions, Microsoft Dynamics 365 partner specializing in supply chain transformation for manufacturing, CPG, and distribution companies. He spent over a decade delivering complex D365 F&O implementations at Blue Horseshoe, which was later acquired by Accenture and folded into Avanade, before co-founding Newark with several former colleagues. With 14 years across the full project lifecycle in industries ranging from three-tier alcohol industry to 3PL, 4PL food distribution to RV manufacturing, Casey brings the kind of battle-tested delivery perspective that only comes from being in the trenches from day one through go live. Casey, thanks so much for joining today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Rory. And I think a big thank you for doing these things. I think the Dynamics community is stronger for the effort you're putting in and interviewing all the different people. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, you're welcome, and I'm glad that's recognized. Um, for anyone that watches regularly, they know I always ask an icebreaker question for anyone who doesn't know yet. I know among the manufacturing Blue Horseshoe network, which is large, a lot of people do know you already. But for anyone who doesn't know you, could you share someone that not a lot of people know about you?
So I'll kind of maybe give a professional and a personal side to kind of get to know from a professional or delivering projects. Um, I'm always much more comfortable supporting, say, like a hypercare for go live. I'd much rather do that than starting a project. Um, I always
Yeah,
look at it as kind of the hypercare is quality of the work you've done up until that point. So I think there's a high level of confidence for me normally there. But it's kind of an effort equation, right? Like go lives are
yeah,
hard, it's planning, but it's effort. Um,
hmm
Getting into starting a project, it's the world of unknowns, and that like for whatever reason shoots anxiety through the roof. Where it's like, have I thought
Oh,
about this? Have I thought about this? What about and do I know these people? Do I remember names? And it's always funny to me where some people like, oh, not a go live, and I'm like, please bring the go lives on. It's the starting of the project that can be for me anxiety inducing. Um, I say for personally something. So I grew up in Southern Indiana, still where I live today. Love it,
hmm
just outside of Bloomington, Indiana, and went to a small school where like sports were, basketball, football, baseball, track, cross country, right? That's from,
yeah.
that's pretty much what we had. So with two little girls that are now 8 and 10, we've started playing soccer, and
Oh,
and it's funny, it's actually become my favorite sport to watch. Trying to learn it and stuff has been fun. Watching the kids at that age play is fun. um,
yeah.
but it's fun for me because I grew up all of those sports, so I'm always critiquing and analyzing soccer. I'm the dumb American watching soccer. So like I don't know what offsides is for like Ted Lasso sometimes, but I've actually loved watching it from that perspective because I take all of the improvement type thoughts out of the equation and just like sit back and enjoy watching them play, which
Yeah.
for some reason is hard to do with, say, softball or basketball, where it's like, hey, that was a great, right? But you should have jab stepped in on a dribble, backed up, crossed over, and went left, right?
Yeah.
So there's always like how to improve. In soccer, it's like kick it harder. I don't really know the how to improve and give that advice in soccer. So personally, I've loved watching the sport of soccer. Haven't quite escalated to professional and world level soccer yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
8 to 10 year olds has been a blast.
Yeah. No, I understand. How about the World Cup though? Are you watching that?
I'm not. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm still a dumb American when it comes to soccer. I'm gonna throw the hand up there. I haven't followed it as much as I wish I would have, but
Yeah.
fall with 8 and 10 year old community leagues right up my alley.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. My 4, almost 5 year old just started as well with playing soccer. He's only like 6 weeks in, so he's still the one that plays with the grass and just rolls when everyone's trying to score goals.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, some parents get very over competitive ones, like tackle, hit them harder. I'm like, these are 4 to 5 year old kids. Just take it easy.
Yeah.
So it's better to just lay back and enjoy your kids while playing the sports. I appreciate what you're saying there. Really good. Um, all right. With back to dynamics then. There was actually a question that I had about what you said about your private about your work life, but I'll just jump into the questions right here, and I'll ask you offline. You've delivered 365 implementations across a lot of industries over 14 years. When you look back at the projects that went sideways, is there a pattern you keep seeing that most people wouldn't expect?
Yeah, so I'd say so kind of two aspects of that question for me is recovery of projects, right? So you come in where something has failed prior,
Hmm.
so you're recovering it, and then I'll admit I've never had a project go that sideways personally, but you have ones that you experience pain on, and I'll kind of look at it both ways. Is when you recover a project, and I want to be transparent, I'll be fair to both sides of the parties. I'll critique clients when necessary, and I'm going to critique partners when necessary. I think
Yeah.
this one can be both sides of the equation. Um, it's very common that when there's a recovery project, and we've had clients where you're number two or number three or number
Yeah.
four, that comes into play is that sometimes I think from a project, from a partner perspective, um, whether it's availability or just skill set needed, industry expertise, is sometimes that partner side team isn't strong enough.
Mm.
I think that weighs in, but I'm going to kind of go to the client side. Is I think a lot of times, or what I've observed, is an intimacy of what is my data? Like how often I say, what categories of items do you have? And it's blank stares, right? So it's
Mm.
intimacy to data, to processes. Like, do we really know how our organization operates, right? Because the reality is failed ERPs more often are showing flaws in other areas. It's like I've heard once or twice, D365 isn't XYZ. And it's like, no, it does a lot of amazing things for a lot of amazing organizations. It will expose flaws, but any
Mhm.
ERP, right, any project where we're delivering a new ERP is going to do that. So where we
Yeah.
don't have that strong knowledge, intimate knowledge of our organizational processes, right, that factors in usually very heavily. But if I had to say just pick one of those, data seems to be the one that always creeps up where it causes pain as you're trying to do mock data conversions, or even going into production cutovers, where we
Yeah.
see the most headaches, um, on these projects.
Yeah. That brings me to the next question actually. With when you said the intimacy to their data and actually knowing their processes. On an earlier call you and I had, you said that one of the biggest risk in a D365 project is that the client doesn't actually know their own end-to-end processes. Can you walk us through what that looks like in practice and why that's so dangerous?
Yeah, so I don't think it's they don't know. I think if you do the zoom in, zoom out, 50,000 foot, they know what they do. thirty
Yeah.
thousand foot for sure. 10,000 foot, pretty strong. Get to that ground level, and always forget that the books that you read where it's like go to page 68 or page 179, right? So kind of choose your own journey. They
Hmm.
don't know all of those decision splits intimately. So if we kind of think through that as one is we're delivering a project what we'd like to be able to do, and I've seen this kind of both sides as well. I don't want to develop a solution to create a sales order, right? Yes, we want to build that business process out, and there could
Hmm.
be many create sales order business processes, whether it's from EDI or an e-commerce channel, customer service rep, whoever creating that order, but I want to know from that inception of order all the way up until the point that we've invoiced. And even from there, right, there's an AR aspect to that order to cash, like true end to end flow. They're not all the same. So this doesn't mean that we'd represent every one of those um, kind of order entry processes as its own complete end to end. But there are things that significantly change or deviate the process where we do need to document separately. And then even
Yeah.
inside of that end to end process, we're going to run into scenarios where I've been having conversations this week of, just the changes from customer pickup versus something that we're going to deliver via parcel or, LTL or truckload. Like those deviate that inventory to deliver side, that warehouse side of the process where we need that split and we need that definition. So I think when we don't understand all of those scenarios, one, just the kind of 10,000 foot, we
Yeah.
then miss requirements. But really, when we get into there's 15 different possible ways that we walk through this, the data we input, how it triggers us, that's where requirements are missed. And then, requirements not being derived early in a project or you get into a UAT and it's like, well, does it do this? Right. So understanding those
Yeah.
end-to-end processes then facilitate testing plans, which then, right, all of these things start to domino together. But ultimately, I think that if you ask that question, I've been publicly traded, private companies, PE, every which way. And that's always been, if I said, show me your some people call it an operating model. We like to call it an end-to-end process portfolio. Show me that.
Hmm.
It doesn't exist. Like we don't have that documented. And I always tell
No.
clients that they're like, what do you think the biggest benefit of doing an ERP project is? And, I think that's subjective, but I was like, you will never be more intimate in your organization than at the end of
Yeah.
this go live. What you do with it from there, right, is where are you going to be back here in 20 years or not? Where it's like, I don't remember why we did this. We've lost that change control, the documentation, whatever it may be. But that's why I think end-to-end processes are important, is your
Yeah.
requirements are driving the design and build. And if I'm not getting my requirements out of you, then we're not gonna, that's gonna be miss the mark down the road.
Yeah. Does that mean that when that knowledge of the ground level, that all those decisions that need those micro decisions that need to be made, that the wrong people are being involved in mapping the processes?
Absolutely sometimes. So always, it's almost always sometimes gonna be the issue. So I've seen, we say, hey, a weakness on most client sides is having a dedicated project team, and we
Hmm.
understand why. There's cost, there's running the business, all these things come together. Um, So normally you have dedicated SMEs or super users or whatever term is going to be used for that project, and they're being staffed. And I've seen managers who know every button click that every person in the system does, and I've seen managers that don't know that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an issue where it's you get the requirements from the person, and they're requirements, but then once you start introducing some of your key end users, say um, during UAT or they get into end user training, they're like, what the heck is this? Right. And you start to realize that they don't really have that intimacy in their processes and you had the wrong people in meetings. So it is one that, it's difficult to do, but any
Hmm.
chance you get to kind of have those champions from more of an end user perspective and pulling them
Yeah.
into sanity check during design, during build, right, during testing, the stronger the outcome will be, or at least the timeline with that overall solution that's delivered.
Yeah. So I guess any good partner would make sure that the client gets intimate with their data and those micro decisions.
It's definitely an area that needs to be stressed earlier than it commonly is.
Yeah. Okay. Um, another topic. You've been vocal about the planning phase being the most undervalued part of a Dynamics implementation. Why do you think clients and even some partners rush through it?
Yeah, I'll just kind of say things that I've heard from the client side. It's like, when are we going to get started? When are we going to
Yeah.
start designing this thing? And I get that it's a big expenditure. It's anxiety inducing. I mean, for some people on the client side, it's their career at that company, yay or nay.
Hmm.
It can get to that point. So I think there's always this like we've got to show that we're having momentum, and planning doesn't really show momentum. There's not a measurable to come out of it other than I can say we've gathered 868 user stories or requirements, or we've spent X weeks, we've hit like you can, but when it gets reported up, I think sometimes there's a separation between executive stakeholders and
Yeah.
what I'll call project stakeholders from a client. So there's not that alignment early, which is something we very much stress on. Why are we doing
Yeah.
this project? What are our measurables? I think from the client side, it's just I want to start showing progress for what we're spending. And you get through the planning phase, and it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever it is, sometimes shorter even. And they just want to get through it so we can start designing stuff and see an outcome.
Yeah.
Um, I think from a partner side, it's don't make the client unhappy, right? Let's try to be um, try to think of a good way to say this. Too friendly too early.
Yeah.
I always kind of make a joke. I want to start a project on the worst possible foot with each other, and the joke is we only go up from there. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
everything's better every day. But the reality is there needs to be that friendly friction where we hold each other accountable, and we're
Hmm.
going through the pieces we need to do. I tell a lot of my consulting team members, it's like, your happiness today is your pain tomorrow, or your pain today is your happiness tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's either make it hard today so that we can have an easy go live,
Yeah.
or relax, right? Maybe miss a couple things, maybe don't push as hard as we need to push in areas, and have a rougher go live or have a rougher tomorrow. So I
Yeah.
think from the partner side, it can be that where you're trying to make the client happy, but I think there's a level of leadership that needs to be communicated. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What's the foundation? And have that alignment. I mean,
Hmm.
through mobilization into the planning phase, right? Have those key stakeholders aligned with you and understand the value, and then stress that importance through the sales cycle of the planning phase.
Yeah. Um, Not sure if it's the best analogy, but I had to think of I'm quite sure it was Muhammad Ali that said that. Like the outcome of the fight is already determined in the weeks before in the training. Like he knew because of the training that he put in what the outcome of the fight would be. Like
Yep.
you do your planning and preparation for the project well. You'll, like you say, you do the hard stuff first. It will be the pain first, and then will be easier later.
Yep. I always
The
kind of
pleasure
define it as
later.
make as many of your unknowns known as you possibly can, because I can acknowledge a risk and not act on it, but knowing it is
Yeah.
there is 90% of the battle, right? That's the
Yeah.
preparation side.
Yeah. And beyond the functional design, what are the work stream strategies that should be locked down during planning, but almost never are?
So I think I'll say this. I don't want to. I'm a very much so not an always never person.
Okay.
I'll kind of phrase it in the way of someone's like, "What's your favorite ice cream?" I'm like, "Well, I like mint chocolate chip today. It may be vanilla tomorrow." I'm kind of I'm not a best most favorite type of statement. So as we
Yeah.
go through here, is I think it's a combination of, and from a new arc methodology, we put heavy focus on these early in the planning phase. And some of these fall under organizational change management, but one, it is very common to see in an ERP project, unless you have maybe a big four delivering, and even then it's coming with a price tag on top of it, where OCM lies on the client side, like true change management lies on the client side. It can be costly. There's things that are going on. I think with OCM, what I would put under that bucket as part of a project is, what is your training plan?
Mm.
Like I've been parts of projects where we came out of planning and there was no training plan. When do we plan to do it? How do we plan to do it? Who are our people we want to deliver? So not even this topic, this date, this agenda, but end user training, we normally stress that's a client side deliverable unless you've asked otherwise, and we'll work through that. But it's,
Yeah.
are your super users or SMEs delivering this? Are they training someone? So like we train the trainer, and is the trainer then training someone? And like what are we doing from a training perspective? And
Yeah.
when do we expect to have some of those events occurring? Because too early can be an issue because we forget by the time we go live. Doing it
Yeah.
all at the end can be an issue because it's too much too fast. And it doesn't fit with a project timeline. So trying to figure that out. But I'd say training plans with that, true testing plans, understanding what my entry and exit criterias are, having those defined, starting to build your four walls in that foundation so that when we get into training, it's not like, well, let's make a decision ad hoc of whether we should exit UAT or not. It's like we've established that criteria already, right? It's
Yeah.
100% of test cases executed, maybe 95% passed, no surveys. Sub 2s are allowable under X quantity with workarounds established. Sub 3s and 4s have workarounds or just accept it as is. But then defining severities, all these things. So testing, security plans. In the public sector, you can't be SOX compliant to go live without custom built security roles. You can't use out of the box. Do I have a security plan? Have I been building it during the design and build phase of a project, or did I execute UAT with security implemented to our users? So all of these things start to build up. Data conversion obviously is one that somehow takes a back seat, but who's running it? Who's managing it? What's the effort? When do we need to start doing it? I had a client that ran retail operations in North America and had, I think, 22 million customers. It took, not using customers V3 as an entity, but using the customer base definition entity. Like, I think we were getting maybe 1,000 customers per hour loaded. So we
Oh,
started like a month before go live, and then as we were rolling out to brick and mortar stores, it was like who signed up loyalty in that store, roll them out, who did transactions a day, get them input, and it was like a 6-week process to get 22 million customers loaded. Like,
yeah,
if you're not talking about volumes and understanding and the who early on, that can be a big issue. And then I'd say the
yeah,
last thing is I ran into, we're doing a D365 or an AX 2012, R3, R2 project back in the day. And you would get 6 months in and they're like, yeah, we're not quite sure. So and so is also dedicated to this other project, or we have competing projects. So it's what is the client's
yeah,
overall program strategy? So what are the efforts that are impacting this ERP project? Let's make sure we've
mhm,
identified that, acknowledged it, documented risks, and move onward. So it's part of our planning. I built complete, 18-month project plans with rollouts, and then it's like you deliver it, and a month later, it's like, well, we have these other things going on, and we need to change it. And it's like, well, those things have to be part of communications in that planning phase. So I think
yeah,
kind of all of those lumped together outside of normal, process requirements and builds are very important because once you get moving, like they're back there, and it's hard to go back and grab them and gain that steam and then try to
yeah,
plan. So it's like get it done early, understand it, put forth a good plan.
yeah. Do you get a lot of blank stares where you tell a client that they should own OCM or testing or UAT?
Well, I will say it's normally through a sales cycle that has been heavily discussed.
Okay.
We work not perfectly but diligently to ensure there's a RACI documented with ownership tasks of inside of a statement of work um, to kind of call these out. So by the time this pen has hit paper, that has been discussed. Now, are there
Okay.
times that those involved from client side in the sales cycle and project delivery are separated and there wasn't a handoff?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like we've said yes, but we didn't hear what was said. We just
Yeah.
said yes.
Yeah. Because I can imagine if a company that's been on the same ERP for 20 years, never gone through big changes, they have no OCM capability. So they're like, oh, you own this. And they're like, we don't even know what this means or what to do about this.
Yep.
So I can imagine that happening.
Yep. And it's fully understandable. Like this isn't to shame a client for any of that, right? Like
Oh,
it
no.
happens. It's normal. Especially when you live in that, kind of SMB space, is that small and medium corporations have that where I don't have a dedicated X.
Mhm.
But it's funny, we've done public sector, large public, not public sector, but publicly traded companies that are very, very large. And I'm not sure it's any better there either. So it can go both ways.
Yeah.
But you're right on when we've been on AS400 or a mainframe for 30, 40 years and it's been customized over time,
Yeah.
right? And like all that documentation and knowledge has probably changed 20 different sets of hands at that point. Like you get blank stares from that because we really don't know why, and there's a justifiable reason behind it. Is it's just
Yeah.
been a long, long time.
Yeah. All right. Um, another topic, still on the planning side. Is there something about manufacturing and supply chain projects specifically that makes planning gaps even more painful compared to simpler operational setups?
Yeah, I think um, speaking probably more on the manufacturing side, and this can apply anywhere, but I think it will always apply on manufacturing, is there's so many, um, usually there's more processes that are intertwined or interdependent on each other. So the steps in our, if we think of like an end-to-end process and we're in like a make to order type of environment where sales order comes in and then that's triggering demand that we're running through planners and schedulers that eventually, right, we now need to buy material. Or if we're vertically, operated manufacturing group, I've got to produce something for a main assembly, and you start
Hmm.
piecing all of these together. Um, is it's difficult to have all of those things perfectly synced. So once it's usually running, it's a pretty well-oiled machine. But I always use this analogy with our junior consultants. I'm like, go open the door. Like go walk to the office door and go open it. Right. I was like, now explain to me step by step movement of what you did, right? And it's like I took a left step. I'm like, no, you were sitting down. So it's like, well, I stood up. Well, how did you stand up? Well, you used both feet, right? And you had to lean forward. You had to apply force. You had so you start walking through it. And sometimes the business process is much like that, where it's like we take an order, we manufacture it, we ship it. It's like awesome, right? Now let's break that down into all those individual elements, and then you start factoring in just in time environments where the frequency and what happened this morning impacts this afternoon or even morning for morning within an hour or two window. And those things become very, very, very important to have sequenced, always operating the way you need them. So I think in just the manufacturing environment, it would be that. And then,
Hmm.
costing always comes into play. Costing gets extremely, way more detailed in manufacturing environments normally with your
Yeah.
indirect, directs, overheads, laborers, everything trying to apply down. But again, once you get that defined and you have a good cost accounting group um, set up, it's usually running pretty well from that point forward.
Yeah. Okay. Two terms that get thrown around a lot in the dynamic space: best practice and MVP. You have a problem with both of them.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I always say it's best practice to not use best practice. So, no, I think they're both extremely valuable terms. I think they get misused or misunderstood too frequently. Speaking to best practice, always you kind of think of it this way is that from a partner side, you're going to have implementers, you're going to have consultants, and you're going to have thought leaders, right?
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes I feel like, I say like an implementer, it's Rory, you tell me as client what I need to do, and I go configure it and hand it back to you. It's kind of like an application consultant. Like I'm
Yeah.
not really consulting, I just know the application. You asked me to do it, and I did it. So I call those implementers. Consultants will take it a step further and have, the valuable feedback. Well, have you thought about, in the past I've delivered this, and here's where we ran into issues. So you're starting to get consulted in the solution. So it's not just receiving a requirement and being like, let's go
Hmm.
solve it. Or I have a gap requirement, let's solve it with a customization. It's like, no, we've worked through an application workaround, a manual workaround. Can we change your business process to remove that gap? Right. And then we kind of work through that triage level. And then thought leaders are going to bring you into that from a more higher level organizational, like, have we really rethought this? Is this how we want to operate as an organization? So my issue with best practice would be twofold. Is one, I think the wrong people are using it. I think they're using it as if anyone plays, uh, euchre, which I know is kind of a Midwest thing, but it's like a trump card, the card that always wins or is the highest suit. They're using that to get out of tough conversations. And then I think secondly is there could really be this is best practice, but I've got to look at the client's capability, their resources, right? Their ability to manage the whole situation. We were having a call internally the other day with our director of managed services, a gentleman named Matt Elmore, and it was like, hey, we want you to go through our chart of accounts with us as we're growing, as things are changing. Are we structured properly? Do we need to insert any accounts? Do we need to take some counts we broke out too much and generalize them and maybe do more of a dimension kind of underneath of it? And working through that concept. And, I was laughing with him. He's like, well, best practice would be to do X. He's like, however, we're 25 people. We're not an 800,000 person organization. Like, what is
Yeah.
best practice for that size, that level, that scale is different for us.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes that gets misconstrued. And every client I would say, hey, MRP in a manufacturing environment, right? Having production scheduling or capacity scheduling, like you could consider those best practices. I mean, they are considered best practice. I've seen clients from a talent level did not have the people that could manage, right? The usage of the system and the complexity of what they needed it set up to be. But they had a
Hmm.
really good kind of manual base in Excel spreadsheet, wasn't quite as real time, but did what they need. The second we introduced, MRP and D365 or master planning, like it was lights out. So it's kind of where you have to evaluate this may be best practice, but if I can't
Yeah.
do it, if I can't um, operate with it, if we don't have the right resources or capabilities,
Yeah.
you need to evaluate that. Um, with MVP, where I'll kind of equate it. Was laughing. There's this concept of a military decision matrix, right? So when you go through government contracting, say, here's the criteria, here's the weighting of that criteria. So this one may be 60% of our decision. I've got 3 vendors. I rate them. I give them a score on each one. Whoever comes out the highest at the bottom or at the end normally gets contract. So I'm like, it's
Hmm.
a very objective way to measure something that was based on subjective rankings, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's not really objective. So with MVP, it's the viable part of that word that it's right. It's what we should be doing. We stress it to clients like get live on your core business, right? Operate for a while and then figure out your CI, like continuous improvement, continuous development initiatives, and then move
Hmm.
forward with it. But you should be covering your core critical business processes. We get in there and a lot of the times that turns into, well, we don't need a integration. We can manually move that data. We don't need a customization to automate something. We can manually do that, which in and of itself in an individual decision could be correct, but we're not looking at those things in the aggregate, which is at the end of the project, you're like, well, you need to hire 33 people to go manage all these manual processes, right? So that may be viable for us. It may be, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to get 33 temps. We're going to operate for 6 months. During that 6 months, we're going to crush down this backlog and then slowly get back to normal staff. And not to say everything's always adding FTE, but I don't think we spend the time defining the viable part of MVP. And it goes back to
Hmm.
if I don't know business process, if I'm not intimate with X, I can't define these things.
Yeah.
Normally, what happens is you get to UAT, you start getting hey, this didn't work, or we can't do this manually. This isn't what we can do. It gets to the end user level. And then projects extend to cover that backlog on things that could have just been defined earlier. And instead of a 3 month extension, it should have been a 1 month extension, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's mainly using it could be dangerous using those words because you might then jump to the next thing to the next subject instead of actually asking the in-depth questions to uncover what you need to uncover to make sure you're building something fit for purpose at that time for that specific client.
Yep. And absolutely. And that's where when we get into those decisions, especially anytime it's manual or a workaround or something that we're willing to drop, think of like an as is to be. If the to
Hmm.
be is maybe below where the as is today and there's a decision why, so that decision gets logged, the impact of resources, the impact of regression testing, the impact to XYZ gets documented so that we can at the end take an aggregate of all those decisions or periodically and say where are we at. Some decisions may remove headcount, some may add headcount. So at the end of these, I want to know for MVP, like minimal viable product could be all of this functionality at the same headcount. That's a
Yeah.
perfect statement, but you have to analyze that through the course of the project.
Yeah. That makes sense. Thanks for explaining that because on the surface, like I have an issue with MVP. Might upset people, but I think you've explained it well.
Yep. No, I said
uh,
and it's the MVP sometimes maybe on the pre-sales architect, the sales side is used for signature, right? And
Yeah.
again, I think it's true, and I don't think there's lie or deceit happening, but I don't think we've peeled the onion back far enough to ensure understanding of what that means.
Yeah. Um, Going to analogies, you used like the analogy of a sledgehammer versus a framing hammer when it comes to staffing a project. How do you decide when a project needs a domain architect versus when a strong functional consultant can handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the right tool for the right job. And I think in our prior conversation kind of had framed it as there's a cost equation. Client will always want the highest level talent. They don't want
Yeah.
to pay for the highest level talent. So you have to kind of figure out at what point, at what area, what phase of what skill do I need so that I have the right tool there, and then how do I move onwards? So I kind of look at this in a couple ways. Is there are times that we staff a lead position with someone that's maybe a year more junior than we would like them to be. We want someone with 4 years experience, and we don't measure with experience, but it's easy for
Yeah.
compensation. 4 years,
Yeah.
but they're 3 years. So sometimes we do that as a choice to ensure we're growing our people. From a new arc perspective, we pride ourselves being onshore. We bring people in young. We train, early in their careers. We train them. We build, that family type environment. It's what we did at Blue Horseshoe. Extremely
Yeah.
successful.
I was
But
gonna
then they
say.
learn all of those. You're going to love this, and they learn all of our best practices when it comes to consulting, of what we want you to do and how it needs to look. So sometimes we do it for that purpose. But if you kind of remove that from the equation, it could be the industry the client is in, could be we could have externalities or factors weighing in that, hey, we think this is 14 months, but we need to get it done in 12 months or 11 months or 10 months. So like,
Yeah.
where are those pressures applying? And then what I would say is I kind of look at it as, I don't love the term solution architect. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but from a functional expertise, we'll say, hey, I want a functional architect, which is someone that oversees many kind of domains. So they have manufacturing and trade and logistics and warehousing expertise, but maybe aren't super strong in financing, but they kind of know what's there and what exists. So it's someone that can sit over a project and architect many of the functional elements and those interdependencies. A domain architect would be someone that's extremely skilled with manufacturing or where warehouse management, transportation management, or master planning. Usually that's going to fit into another skill, but there are, scenarios where I just need someone who's amazing with master planning. And then, your functional consultant usually going to be your lead level kind of fitting in on a project. So we normally like to grow our people as well as strengthen. I always say the earlier the better. So I
Yeah.
want some level of architect, whether it's a domain. So we have 15 warehouses or DCs going live, and I need a WMS domain architect. Or this is kind of an area where there's a lot of integrations and interdependencies with external systems. I need more of a functional architect, but I want those people involved more in planning and design, so they've helped ask the right questions to get to the right
Mhm.
requirements, right? Expertise is very valuable there. They've helped assist with the design. And this doesn't mean every single design, but where are our core critical business processes that are high risk and or very complex? Let's ensure that we've got that expertise there to help deliver. And then as you start to exit design, it's really now translating over and speaking all of this at the functional level, now translating over to, your functional leads and your analysts who are going to be delivering. At that point, we like to have a little bit of hover, right? Because questions pop up, and we want to make sure we have that support there, as well as, you know, from our side, intimacy with client solution, to make sure we have those right people there. So it's a cost versus quality type of component. Um,
Yeah.
so I think for us, we think the best balance is finding, and every project will be a little bit different. If it's alcohol distribution, normally more of the trade and logistics side is important, and less of the warehousing. But if you get into manufacturing, the warehousing and manufacturing knowledge is usually more critical in that. So it's get the right people in the right spots early in a project, Like I said,
Yeah.
build a good foundation, build those good four walls, and then keep progressing in that fashion. I think that gets, the best quality for the lowest cost to the client.
Yeah. And then from a client's perspective, how should they think about what kind of team they're actually getting from their partner and what questions should they be asking about that?
So I would say these questions should start during a sales cycle. I do understand that some sales cycles can be 9, 12, 18 months long.
Hmm.
We prefer for them to be shorter. So if any clients are listening, I'd love to condense those down for us. Let's do it. But we understand there's a lot going on, right? There's the economics of the deal. There's the scope of the deal. There's all these things factoring in. Um, I think it's not abnormal for a partner to have good, high quality solution architects from a pre-sales perspective.
Yeah.
So you see it. These pre-sales architects have sold to 10 other clients, or they at least went through a sales cycle. They understand they know all of these things, and that can build confidence, and it should.
Yeah.
Um, but there are times that's not that they're not our times. That's probably 99% of the time. That's not the team that's going to be delivering the project for you. Um,
Yeah.
so I've seen it was a different partner for a different application that was part of a larger program. They did amazing during the sales cycle, right? Signed on for a Salesforce implementation with the client, and then team shows up, and it was what I would say is, it was a fixed fee project, and it was analyst, 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 in my opinion.
Mm.
So it was implementers and not consultants.
Yeah.
Um, that is one that is common with fixed fee, right? Because there's like I got to control costs, and sometimes you try to come in with cheaper resources. But I think
Yep.
getting introduced to, if you can get a dedicated, this person will be your project manager, or whatever your term, project director, project MD, from the partner side. Like, these are the people that's going to be staffed on your project, and or like interviewing potential candidates. I think that's very valuable for a client. And I said, no partner's there to bait and switch. I don't want to, maybe have made it sound as such, but things happen. The timeline, I could introduce someone now in 6 months, the project starting. Well, I can't have the cost of a person sitting 6 months waiting either. So
Yeah.
sometimes timing just doesn't happen. But I think it's getting that confidence that those that are going to deliver have the experience, at least the pool of people have the partner provide work resumes, for key areas of that project.
Yeah. Do you do you I was gonna say best practice.
That's
Should
well,
should
I have a
should
story.
should clients interview the consultants before they're assigned to the project?
I think so. And again, I don't think every position that's part of the project. Like, I'm not going to go interview 15 developers,
No.
but my technical architect or tech lead, absolutely. I think that maybe is getting closer in that, like, project start -2 month type of window. And let's be
Yeah.
honest, a lot of times pen on paper, the client goes, "Can I start tomorrow?" And it's like, well, no, it's usually about a 4 week
Yeah.
window to try to staff. And sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. But I do
Yeah.
think there's um, in that -1, -2 month, and or maybe even before, just want to know the pool of candidates, get a work resume at least, highlighting key experiences, and have a conversation.
Yeah.
If a partner's unwilling to do that, I would maybe throw up a red flag here or there, of like, why can't I, you know,
Yeah.
acknowledge I may not be the person. I acknowledge I'm not getting that person necessarily, but I will say the closer you are to the project, the easier it is to lock in those resources. So
Yeah.
I would absolutely recommend is, you know, if it's a complex, more, many kind of sub projects going on. So I'm gonna say project manager, but more of a program manager.
Yeah.
Interview that person. Ask to interview them. I want to make sure we have the appropriate skills, and that doesn't mean, PMP at the end of the name. I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
people that are great test takers, and they can tell you what the textbook, right, with what Pinbox
Yeah.
says. In application, I'm not sure if they know their elbow from, another body part. So it's sometimes resumes look great. Have that
Yeah.
conversation and ensure that it's the right person. And sometimes, I've had clients go, we love this person, but we don't feel like they're stern enough, strict enough, confrontational enough,
Yeah.
in that good way to manage this project. Like I need someone who is swinging a baseball bat every day, and is not trying to win people over with, with candy bars or
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a personality conflict that is, let's make sure we have the right personalities to work with each other, and that happens and is a very fair thing to
To
make that
want.
decision on.
Yeah. Last last question. If you could go back to year one of your consulting career and give yourself one piece of advice about delivering projects, Dynamics projects, what would that be?
So I can't say run though, right?
You can say run.
No, I'm kidding. Uh, I will say so I got out of the Marine Corps. Actually, one of our co-founders, Kyle Zip, and I served in the Marine Corps together, and had the opportunity to work with each other at Blue Horseshoe, although we never really worked with each other. We just had the same employer, I
Just
guess.
same employer.
Um, but yeah, so I go through that. I worked for Department of the Navy at a working capital fund in Southern Indiana, delivering projects to all branches of the military and government services, and loved that. It was a little stale for me, but coming into consulting, I've loved like every day is really a learning opportunity, right? And early in a career, it was learning applications, and then you start learning processes, and now you start learning how to, right? And the levels that you're now learning, it's I've stepped up and I'm branching out. I've stepped up and I've branched out. But the one piece of advice I'd give myself going back is, and I kind of give this to all of my consulting team members now. It's just because you got your stuff done doesn't mean the project's healthy, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes you have alligator arms. So early in my career, I'd be like, my stuff's done, and I never went asked another area, do you need help with? Can I step in? Right? One, there's a learning opportunity to be had. Or hey, I got my stuff done and I tasked the client. If they don't do it, they don't do it. Well, that was immature Casey. Like that was very critical. Like if they don't get their stuff done, it's still my ass just going to get chewed eventually, right? Like
Yeah.
no matter who the responsible party is, it always comes back to the partner, right? Now, right or
Yeah.
wrong, it always comes back. So I tell my consulting team a lot is like if you're 0.1% part of the problem, you are the problem. And that mentality is to always be willing to help, um, always be driving towards problem solving. I was like, I love it when people bring problems to me. Over time, if that's all you do, I don't love it as much, right? Because
Yeah.
we want to identify problems, but we also need to be problem solvers. And if we're this much part of that problem, we all bear the responsibility to solve that problem. So my advice going back would be don't focus on yourself as much. Although when you're learning everything is, never touching, there was growth to be had, but it's
Yeah.
branch out, ask your other areas, solve problems. And that maybe took me a couple years to figure out in my career.
Yeah. Don't have alligator arms.
That's right. Or T-Rex arms, right? You got to
Yeah.
reach out
I
to the
know I
problem.
know what you want. I never heard the analogy, but I knew exactly what you meant. Alligator. No, all good. Thanks so much for sharing. For anyone that has any questions after hearing this, how can they best reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can reach out directly via LinkedIn, right? Tag me there,
Yep.
send me a message. My email is Casey, Casey dot Thompson, Thompson at Newark dot Solutions. So just make sure to don't put a .com at the end of that. But yeah, always, like I said, I'm an open book. I'm always willing to help, even if you just have a general question. You know, schedules can be hectic, so I'll usually try to reply quickly. It may take us a while to sync up, but yeah, reach out or just visit Newark.Solutions. Go to our website, and there's a contact us feature on the site. Feel free to reach out. Like I said, we're a bunch of nerds that love solving problems and doing these things. So please reach out with any questions.
Yeah. No, thanks so much, and thanks for taking the time to answer all these questions as well. I'm sure there's people that will find this very helpful. So thanks so much for all your insights, Casey.
Yep. Thank you for having me, Rory.
All right. Take care. Thanks for watching another episode of Dynamics Compass. I started doing the podcast because in my work as a recruiter, I was speaking to all these Dynamics decision makers that had the same kind of questions. So I figured, well, I have a big network of Microsoft Dynamics experts. Why don't I just approach them, interview them, record it, and make all the answers freely available? So if there's a question that you really want answered that is Dynamics related, let me know. Find me on LinkedIn or write to me on rory@thegoodtalent.co, and I'll find the expert, I'll interview them, and make it freely available so you're informed and you can keep progressing your Microsoft Dynamics journey. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.